There is a decline in black male baseball players. And I didn't realize why that was happening. I thought there was a decline in baseball for black men because baseball is like a smart game. It's something that you have to like use your brains and your mind. And so I was thinking that maybe the black men were smart enough to play baseball. And that's why there's a decline, but that's not it. That's not what's going on. I have with me Kevin Stewart. He's a PhD and the executive director of the Austin Institute for the Study of Family and Culture. And his website is Austin, AUSTIN, institute.org. He is the co-author to a study titled Called Out at Home. Very, very, very interesting article. As I said, I noticed the decline in black men playing baseball, but I thought it was an intellectual thing. And you say it's due to the decline of the black fathers in the home.
Yes, I think the first thing to understand is the magnitude of the decline. So since the height of African American representation in Major League Baseball, which was 1981, at just over 18%, African American representation has decreased by more than 60%.
That's amazing.
So that this year it was just 7.2%. Now, over that same period of time, white representation in Major League Baseball has also fallen, but only by 10%. So the difference in the fallen rates can't be attributed simply to the large influx of Latino and Hispanic players, but there's something else going on. So we looked into what that something else might be. And it turns out that the steepest decline in African American representation occurs about 20 years after the steepest decline starts in married marital childbirths. So what we see there tied tightly together then is the sharp rise in out-of-wedlock childbirths and the sharp decline in African American players.
That's amazing. After reading this, I realized when I was growing up, black men and women were married for the most part. The fathers were in the homes, grandfathers were around. And I remember seeing my stepfather, my uncles, and out playing baseball on the weekend, and the boys would go out and play too. And some of them went on to become professional baseball players because of that influence. You said it declined 10% for white males. Is that due to the lack of fathers as well?
I think that's an interesting question, and it bears research. So one of the things we make clear in the report is that when you get any social phenomenon that's this large, America has 320 million people, it's going to have multiple causes, right? It won't be just one thing that causes a 60% decline. Right. It'll be lots of things. But certainly one of those things, a very important factor, and one that no one had been talking about until our report came out, is the role of fathers.
Yeah.
That we all agree that children need as many caring adults in their lives as they can get. But what our research shows is that fathers have a special role in the life of a child. So I don't want to, a lot of people have been focusing in on sort of the negative side of this, which is the decline of marital births in African American homes. But I think it's also important to focus on what this tells us that's positive about fathers, that men should hear the message, that they have a special, irreplaceable role to play in the life of their children.
I agree 100%. For the last 26 years, I've been talking about the impact that it has on boys and girls, the negative impact that it has for not having your father there. It affects you mentally, emotionally. It changes your whole outlook on life. It affects everything that you do in life. But yet the country, the government seems not to understand that. And they are like, it seems that they're intentionally trying to destroy their family, keep fathers away from their children. Have you noticed that?
We have certainly noticed efforts to to say that what children need is only caring adults in their lives, and that basically those are interchangeable, that it doesn't matter where the concern comes from or who they are. And what our research is showing is that that's just simply not the case,
Yeah.
that fathers and mothers have special roles to play. For instance, our research showed that with both boys and girls, having a father in the home affected which sport they chose to play in high school. So the girls were more likely to play softball and the boys more likely to play baseball
Yeah.
when there was a father in the home. And so if a father can affect something as seemingly small as the choice of sports that a child plays in high school, think about what their impact must be on the really big and important things in a person's life.
That's right. You went into great detail studying this. Can you explain that to us?
Yes, so we knew that, we had this hypothesis that fathers make a difference, and we knew that that would be controversial, and we knew that there would be critics, as there should be. This is how good scholarship works. So we wanted to test the hypothesis in multiple different ways. So we tested it 5 different ways using large national data sets as well as doing our own original data collection. The interesting part of our own original data collection was that we sampled over 600 current Major League Baseball players, over 400 of which were born in the United States. And among those born in the United States, over 90% came from a household with a father in it. Now, the overall rate in the U.S. for fathers living in the home is about 47%. So your average baseball player is twice as likely to come from a home with a father present than just the generic national average. Mm-hmm. And the same held true with African American players.
A very, very, very Mamma Mia study. This is so fascinating to me because most of you know for the last 26 years, my nonprofit organization has been, its focus is to rebuild the family by rebuilding the man. I saw what happened to the black community when the government became the daddy and the race hustling leader became the head of the people. Black folks have been suffering ever since. It's just gotten worse because that father is not there. I never for a second realized that not having a father can also affect whether you play baseball or not. Did this study have an impact on you personally?
It did. As a married man who'd love to be a father, it really reinforced for me how important fathers are in the lives of their children. Lots of people have asked, well, what's going on? Why baseball? What about football and basketball? Well, here's what I think. This is a hypothesis. We haven't confirmed this yet, but here's what I think is going on. So if we imagine this spectrum where football and sports like football and lacrosse are at one end, where they require a lot of people and equipment and organization in order to really improve your skills. You need a weight room. You need lots of expensive equipment. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we imagine basketball and track, where you don't need anyone else. You can go and get better at those things by yourself. Right. You can go down to the neighborhood court with a ball and practice your free throws. You can do sprints and things like that on a school track or a neighborhood track. Baseball falls in between, where you need at least one other really dedicated person who will spend a lot of time with you doing just playing catch, doing batting practice. Another sport that falls in the middle we might think of is something like tennis, where you're pretty limited as to how much better you can get without somebody to hit the ball back to you. With baseball, the skills involved are very difficult. Physics-wise, it's just very hard to hit that small round ball that's moving very fast with a cylindrical bat. The sweet spot is small. The best hitter in the game this year barely managed to do it a third of the time, right? To get a hit a third of the time. And that's the batting title. DJ LeMahieu won the batting title this year. Yeah.
Amazing. You write about Alex Rodriguez, and he is one of the greatest baseball players and one of the exceptions because he didn't have his father there either. And he talked about, I believe he was 3 or 4. No, he was 9 when his father left. And it was hard for him to accept it. He thought his father went to the store and was coming back, that he would tell himself. Tell us about Alex Rodriguez and why was he able to do so well and not have his father around?
Right. So with any rule, there will be with any tendency, there will be exceptions. But what I think is interesting about A-Rod as an exception is that he himself says how much he felt the lack of his father.
Yeah.
So he overcame the obstacles placed in his path by not having his father around. But he acknowledges that they were obstacles that are still painful even today.
Yeah.
And so what I think is interesting there is we went in search of, well, what do the players say about their fathers? And all you have to do is enter a Google search for baseball players and fathers, and there are some pretty touching quotes that come up.
It's amazing. He even said even today, he still can't get close to people due to the lack of his father being there. Mm-hmm. I know exactly what he's talking about. Baseball is known as the American pastime. Could this be part of why blacks feel less American today than ever?
I don't know. That's an interesting question for further research as to what makes people feel tightly connected to the country and what makes them feel a little more alienated. I mean, certainly what comes to mind is Adam Jones' quote that baseball is a white man's sport. And as we point out in the report, that is less true today than it's ever been, which is to say that baseball is more diverse now than it's ever been. But the reason Jones is not wrong to feel that way is because of this 60% decline in African American representation in Major League Baseball. Yeah. So he's seeing less and less African American participation or representation in Major League Baseball every year. So who could blame him for feeling like things are going the wrong way?
Amazing. My final question, what type of negative feedback you've gotten due to this research?
Sure. Well, some people are really quick to say it's all about money. It's all about money. That it doesn't really have to do with fathers. It's just about money in the household. That is the quickest criticism that we receive. We think that's not entirely fair. Certainly, money has something to do with it, in that if you can afford private coaches and things like that. But actually, the data say it doesn't explain everything.
Yeah.
In part, they have the problem with facing like the Latin American. We've had a huge influx of players from Venezuela and Dominican Republic, places that are very poor, and they still send lots of professional players. So that doesn't explain it. And also we did data checks. We did regression. We checked to see if it was just income. And the big question I give people when they say it's all about income is this. The question is, what is causal? Is the income causing a father to be in the home? Or is a father in the home causing there to be more money in the bank? Which do you think is more likely?
Yeah. Well, it's the father in the home for sure.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt. Hey, Aaron grew up poor, and he hit bottle caps with sticks, right?
Right.
That's amazing. Here's what Alex Rodriguez had to say about his father. He grew up without his father. Dad left us when I was 9. I thought he was coming back. I thought he had gone to the store or something, but he never came back. It still hurts. After a while, I lied to myself. I tried to tell myself that it didn't matter, that I didn't care. To this day, I still can't get close to people. I don't care what anyone says, how you try to deny it, how you say it's not important. The worst thing that can happen to a child, male or female, never mind the color, is to lose your father, to be turned away from your father, for your father to leave you. In the good old days when boys were boys and men were men, when there was a divorce, the children were given to the fathers, not the mothers, because they understood then how important, especially after 3 years of age, how important the father is to the children. It's a matter of life and death, good versus evil, salvation or non-salvation. That's how important it is. The father is the Christ, and it affects your entire life not to have him.
And it turns out that the steepest decline in African American representation occurs about 20 years after the steepest decline starts in marital child childbirths. So what we see there tied tightly together then is the sharp rise in out-of-wedlock childbirths and the sharp decline in African American players.
That's amazing.
African American representation has decreased by more than 60%.
That's amazing.
So that this year it was just 7.2%. Now, over that same period of time, white representation in Major League Baseball has also fallen, but only by 10%. So the difference in the fall in rates can't be attributed simply to the large influx of Latino and Hispanic players, but there's something else going on. So we looked into what that something else might be.
Very, very, very interesting article. As I said, I noticed the decline in black men playing baseball, but I thought it was an intellectual thing. And you say it's due to the decline of the black fathers in the home.
Yes, I think the first thing to understand is the magnitude of the decline. So since the height of African American representation in Major League Baseball, which was 1981, at just over 18%.
There is a decline in black male baseball players. And I didn't realize why that was happening. I thought there was a decline in baseball for black men because baseball is like a smart game. It's something that you have to like use your brains and your mind. And so I was thinking that maybe the black men were smart enough to play baseball. And that's why there's a decline. But that's not it. That's not what's going on. I have with me Kevin Stewart. He's a PhD and the executive director of the Austin Institute for the Study of Family and Culture. And his website is Austin, AUSTIN, -institute.org. He is the co-author to a study titled Called Out at Home.